Albinism is a rare, non-contagious, recessive genetic condition that limits the body's ability to process melanin. People with albinism, also known as albinos, have fair skin and hair, and most are legally blind. Albinism occurs if both parents carry the recessive albinism gene. Globally around the world, 1 in 18,000 people suffer from albinism, but in Tanzania, in sub-Saharan Africa, the frequency is more than a tenfold of the global rate, in 1 in 1,429 people suffering from albinism. The rate in Tanzania is so high primarily based on two effects. First, Tanzania is a population where the mutation is already most common, so it's more likely that both parents are going to be carriers of the recessive gene. And second, social pressures tend to group people with albinism together, where they're more likely to intermarry, greatly increasing the chances of albinistic offspring. In Tanzania, the estimated 100,000 albinos face unavoidable threats of heinous physical violence from infancy. The atrocities committed against albinos especially target children and women, where infanticide, kidnapping, amputations, and decapitations are committed for purposes of supplying highly valued body parts used for amulets, which are then sold in underground witchcraft markets. In Tanzania, a complete set of human arms, legs, ears, and genitals from an individual with albinism may be offered for a price of up to $75,000. According to the UN, there's been nearly 80 reported cases of albino people being killed since 2000, but perhaps what's even more frightening is that there's about the same number of people who survived the similar attacks. But it's important to consider that the figures surrounding the albino populations are wildly inaccurate, as gauging the size of Tanzania's albino population has been difficult in the past. But it becomes far more difficult to find accurate figures surrounding albino persecution from the Tanzanian government, as the number of reported cases are severely underreported, as Joseph Torner said that I cannot say how many have been killed because these things are happening in secret. But the official UN 2017 counts are 80 albino Tanzanians have been killed since 2000, and there's been 96 reported attacks on Tanzanian albinos since 2000.
You get the body parts of albino, you'll become rich. So people started to hunt us like with animals. People started to chop us because they want to become rich.
In Tanzania, a single limb can be worth up to 4 times the average annual income. A complete human body, chopped apart and sold bit by bit, can be worth 5 times what the average Tanzanian expects to earn in a lifetime. But the main driving forces underlying the horrific crimes are the lasting myths and superstitions leading to dehumanization and ineffective laws, and thus, the stigma and atrocities affecting the albino population may be attributed to the lack of familiarity and education about albinism coupled with ignorance.
Are being killed because of superstition.
The notion is that they're magical. They're not human like us. They're ghosts, right? And so if you've got these ghost-like creatures, A, it's not bad killing them because they're not human beings anyway. And B, if you kill the ghost and have a part of its body and can harness it and use it for your own ends, you will have magical power. And so you really need to understand that to understand this crime.
The beliefs and superstitions surrounding their condition affect their family life and interfere with access to education, employment, and marriage, as well as dehumanizing them and putting them into severe danger, perpetuating the cycle and making it more and more difficult for the cycle of violence to break. Other belief myths and superstitions include that albino body parts worn as amulets bring good luck, fortune, and health, that albinos have magical superpowers that can cure diseases, and that the devil stole the original child and replaced it with the albino, and that the albino child is a ghost.
Here he lobbies Tanzania's Prime Minister.
We want justice to roll like a river for the people of albinism in this country, and I know you want that.
We have what I would call probably a headache in the prosecution process.
The wheels of justice in Tanzania have turned slowly. It's taken more than 2 years for the first murder convictions against killers of albinos. Miriam recognized one of her attackers, a neighbor, and is now under arrest, but the government says bringing his case to court could take as long as 5 years. And in the meantime, the attacks continue.
That is a gross violation of the right to be a human being.
Chikau, a former prosecutor, said that the cases can take even longer than 5 years, but he counters claims that the Tanzanian police drop witchcraft cases for fear of revenge from both the living and the dead, and buy intentionally large amounts of paperwork and funds required from the system for such cases. Tanzania's Witchcraft Act, the 3-page document holds the laws used to convict suspected witch doctors, mostly dates back to 1928. It's extremely vague in defining sorcery, bewitching, the use of an instrument of witchcraft, and the purported exercise of occult power. Simeon Misaki, a retired professor of anthropology at the Dar es Salaam University, said that the law is not effective as, first of all, it's colonial. Even in defining witchcraft as it does, it protects witches in face of the law.
People do not know what albinism is.
Targets.
They deny, they say the woman has slept maybe with a Caucasian. They don't accept the child because they do not understand. So it's all about lack of knowledge and ignorance. So if our country would take the time to educate the people about this condition, then this can be altogether prevented.
The lack of knowledge and ignorance creates this discrimination that impedes on access to health services and isolates individuals with albinism from their families, communities, and caregivers. Segregation is the root of poor health, transforming the otherwise manageable symptoms into an urgent and devastating crisis. In Tanzania, where stigma is rife, only half of all children with albinism attend primary school, and just 10% attend secondary school.
Where the key players include a witch doctor, a politician, an albino, and a leader of a local NGO. Where the witch doctor wants to make his practice legal, wants to buy and sell the products, and profits off of the murder. Another stakeholder is an albino persecution victim who wants to live freely and safely and wants to be integrated into society.
His dreams are just the same as many other African children. One day, Hassan wants to be rich.
Another stakeholder is the leader of a local NGO activist protecting albino safety, where he wants to help albinos in need and wants to keep his own safety as well.
This time I started to get threats, like getting, text messages telling me that you have to stop talking, you have, you are not allowed to speak. And in 2012 I was attacked.
While Tanzania has demonstrated low human development indices and seemingly high prevalence of government corruption, the current president's actions put him towards change for albinos and away from supporting witch doctors, because he cares about his international reputation as a nation, because as a country it is very difficult to make strides when you have the black cloud of albino murders following your nation. As well, he wants to maintain power and does not want to be like other politicians exploiting the inhumane craft.
2015, Tanzania banned witch doctors. The government believes they have fueled these attacks by convincing people to sell them albino body parts to make talismans.
The ban amending the Tanzanian Witchcraft Act made the killing of an albino a capital crime, and by stopping the witch doctors from operating, it stopped the horrific trade that appealed economically to many Tanzanians. Witchcraft is a traditional element of the Tanzanian culture, but the government insists that Tanzania does not believe in witchcraft, which is not true, as a US survey in 2010 found that while most people in Tanzania are Christian or Muslim, 93% of them said that they believed in witchcraft. The ban's actions did nothing to address the problems in Tanzania and only served to push the albino hunters out of Tanzania into neighboring nations like Uganda and Burundi, where they immediately resumed their trade. In fact, 11 men were thereafter charged with murdering albinos in the Burundi to export the body parts to Tanzania, as well banning them would not solve the problem of eradicating these superstitions. Witch doctors in Tanzania also have a necessary fundamental role in healthcare, providing traditional medicines, especially in rural areas. In addition, only a fraction of all doctors practiced this appalling type, as it only appealed to the economically elite.
Witch doctors are respected citizens and an established part of the local culture. Melinda James denies she has anything to do with the attacks on albinos, but admits that a few unscrupulous practitioners are giving all witch doctors a bad reputation.
The worst expression of discrimination against persons with albinism is their dehumanization, which lays the foundation for horrific physical attacks against them. Having sanctuaries cannot become the long-term solution. Albinism sanctuaries act as a short-term solution that only protects a minute fraction of those needing help and are stricken with many internal problems. You can look at the case study of the Kambanga Center in western Tanzania that holds just over 70 children with albinism that live without adequate shelter in deplorable conditions. Dorms were overcrowded and the center lacked adequate sanitary installations and had no furniture. In reality, one quoted was saying that the center operated primarily as a walled warehouse for kids with with albinism, with a schooling as a haphazard effort. Persons with albinism deserve to have their rights to life and security protected, as well as a right not to be subjected to torture and ill treatment. Education and awareness-raising campaigns can help combat the superstition and stigma associated with the genetic disorder. In order to present itself as a viable and responsible member of the international community using the president's influence, Tanzania must act quickly and effectively to rid itself of the dark shadow cast on its reputation by the albino killings. The only real solution lays in breaking the superstitions, because there will always be a market for the violence when the consumers still believe in the pseudoscience. The killers will continue to kill until there is no body parts to sell, because the killers are not, for the most part, thought to be those who actually hold this superstition, but organized criminal gangs act as body part wholesalers. So the extent that the killing of albinos is an organized commercial pursuit on a countrywide level, and the way to destroy this appalling economy is through destroying the demand through education and awareness. The Tanzanian government, with the help of NGOs and the UN, must institute a far-reaching, multi-pronged approach that addresses the issue from above and below. The solution has four main parts, including a change in curriculum in schools, spreading awareness, allocating more funding to local organizations, and supporting a public education cell phone interactive program. The Tanzanian Ministry of Education proposed to provide an introduction to albinism to public school teachers and college professors that they would implement into their classes thereof. This is importantly mainly because of the insufficient training of class teachers and the lack of accurate information about the condition, educating the teachers on the double vulnerability that the albino population faces. This would help to begin to educate the teachers and the 93% of Tanzanian students getting a primary education that could then go home and spread the true information beyond to their families and within their communities. As well, the United Nations Human Rights Council and the African Commissions on Human and People's Rights adopted resolutions in 2013 and 2014 called for the prevention of attacks and discrimination against people with albinism. On the 18th of December 2014, the General Assembly adopted the Resolution 69-170, proclaiming with effect from June 13, 2015, as International Albinism Awareness Day. This important new mandate will help to give a voice to people with albinism and contribute to their protection through greater awareness raising, annual reporting to the Human Rights Council on specific concerns. Through the International Awareness Day, more local and international attention can be brought to the issue to call for more action in the future, like more support to local NGOs like Under the Sun, which is the third part of my solution, which is to support already active organizations like Under the Same Sun that works locally in Tanzania with the message that albinos deserve the same rights and opportunities as every other person. They work through albinism seminars in villages, universities, schools, and hospitals, education in rural areas, and have a national media presence. And finally, for the fourth part of my solution, it is important to consider that to change the attitudes of people is very challenging, but by using the technology that people in Tanzania use every day, such as a phone, it becomes very easy to access information and learn about albinism. With this initiative, it greatly increases albinism information accessibility, awareness, and support through having it just a phone call away through the interactive voice response system on mobile phones. On IVR, the user just needs to dial the given number and simply follow the instructions to access the unfound information required, such as about what is albinism, how to raise a child with albinism, tips for skincare for a person with albinism, security tips, and contact information for health centers and hospitals, and etc. This initiative could be successful because in Tanzania there are over 40 million subscribers of mobile phones with a population of just 53 million, and a recent statistic suggests that there is at least one phone to each household. The benefits of the system include that the initiative is available 24/7 in most regions of the country, is uninterferable by opposing parties, and is available in confidentiality, and is being used on one of the most common communication devices in Tanzania, above TV and radio. But unfortunately cannot change the fact that most Tanzanians are not searching to change their fundamental beliefs by calling a publicly funded hotline. But through these multiple steps of the solution, the hope is to create a culture in Tanzania shifting away from these fatal superstitions. By reducing societal stigma, then resources can be finally allocated to ensure that each albino person has access to sufficient amounts of sunscreen and optical healthcare so that the life of a Tanzanian albino is optimal and devoid of prosecution, threats, or any other human rights violation.
Je suis un noir, ma peau est blanche, et moi j'aime bien ça, c'est la différence qui est jolie.